In the heart of the Indonesian archipelago, where social inequality looms like a shadow over the vibrant landscape, emerges the enigmatic figure of Tommy Suharto, the youngest son of former dictator Suharto. Raised in a world of unparalleled opulence, Tommy grew accustomed to having power and wealth at his disposal. From a young age, he witnessed his father not only rule the nation but also appropriate vast state resources, amassing a fortune that would ensure he and his family a life of unimaginable excess. Tommy never knew limits, neither moral nor legal. Every desire, no matter how extravagant, was readily fulfilled. He inherited not only his father's wealth but also a sense of impunity that allowed him to act above the law. This unchecked privilege led him to a life of excess and crime. In 2002, when he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for ordering the murder of a Supreme Court judge who had convicted him of corruption, the shock was less about his conviction and more about the surprise that, finally, someone from the Suharto family was facing justice. But the sentence that should have marked a turning point in Tommy's history of impunity quickly proved to be a farce. Instead of facing the harsh realities of the Indonesian prison system, Tommy used his vast fortune to subvert justice once again. Cenang prison, known for its brutality and deplorable conditions, was quickly transformed into a luxury refuge for him. What should have been a common cell became a sumptuous suite, filled with all the amenities money could buy. This twist is a reflection of a reality where power and money are capable of corrupting even the most fundamental institutions. Tommy Suharto's story in prison is more than a tale of corruption. It is a mirror reflecting the fragility of a judicial system that bends to the influence of the rich and powerful. To the public, Tommy's saga is not just about a man who escaped the grasp of justice, but about a system that was entirely bought and manipulated. Tommy Suharto, the Prince of Impunity, has become a symbol of the battle between justice and corruption. His luxurious life in prison raised fundamental questions about the effectiveness of institutions and equality before the law. But above all, his story forces us to confront a harsh truth. In a world where economic power prevails, true justice remains a distant ideal. Cenang, one of Indonesia's most feared prisons, was known for its overcrowded cells where daily survival was a constant struggle. However, for Tommy Suharto, this hellish place was transformed into something radically different. Instead of facing the harsh and unforgiving reality that defined the lives of other prisoners, Tommy managed to turn his cell into a true oasis of luxury, challenging the very essence of incarceration. The transformation process began quickly after his arrival. Using his vast fortune, Tommy bribed guards, administrators, and practically anyone who could help him build his private refuge within the walls of Cenang. What should have been a bare, comfortless cell became a space of opulence. Equipped with air conditioning, a soft bed, luxurious carpets, and even a state-of-the-art television, the space resembled more of a hotel suite than a prison cell. But the physical transformation of the space was only part of the story. Tommy's cell was not just a place to rest but a symbol of his ability to subvert the system. The walls surrounding his cell did not represent confinement but a barrier that separated luxury from the chaos outside. While other prisoners faced inhumane conditions, Tommy enjoyed meals prepared by private chefs and received regular visits from friends, family, and even hairdressers. Tommy's cell became the epicenter of a scandal that exposed the endemic corruption in Indonesia's prison system. But more than that, it became an emblem of the inequality that permeates society. What for many was a place of punishment, for Tommy was a continuation of his life of excess. Once again, money proved to be a force capable of shaping reality, turning what should have been a punishment into a reward. Tommy Suharto's golden refuge in Cenang is living proof of how wealth can distort justice. His golden cell, hidden in the heart of one of the country's most feared prisons, is a constant reminder that in a corrupt system, money not only talks but shouts. And while Tommy enjoyed his privileges, the rest of the world looked at Cenang as a grim example of what happens when justice is subverted by the power of money. The transformation of Tommy Suharto's cell into a luxury space was not an isolated incident but rather the result of a complex and sophisticated network of corruption that extended throughout the Indonesian prison system. Tommy's story illustrates how corruption knows no boundaries, crossing physical and legal barriers to shape reality according to the desires of the most powerful. At the center of this network was the widespread practice of bribery, which became the pillar upon which Tommy built his comfortable life behind bars. Corruption in the Indonesian prison system is a reflection of a broader culture where money often dictates the rules. In Cenang, this culture flourished, allowing Tommy to turn his cell into a true sanctuary. Massive bribes were paid to ensure that he had access to everything he desired. Guards, administrators, and even high-ranking government officials were part of this web of corruption, in exchange for a share of Tommy's fortune. With labor bought and paid for, Tommy's life inside the prison differed little from his life outside. But corruption in Cenang did not benefit Tommy alone. Other wealthy prisoners, though not as privileged as he was, also managed to buy favors and improvements in their incarceration conditions. This corrupt system created a distinct class within the prison. The VIP prisoners who, thanks to their financial power, lived in a world separate from other inmates. For these individuals, prison was not a place of punishment but rather an extension of their opulent lifestyles, purchased with the universal currency of corruption. Corruption in Cenang not only eroded the integrity of the penal system but also cast a shadow over Indonesian justice as a whole. When it was discovered that Tommy Suharto lived in such luxury within the prison, the public reacted with outrage. The revelation that money could turn punishment into privilege undermined the public's trust in the institutions that were supposed to protect justice and equality. For many Indonesians, Tommy's case was proof that corruption not only permeates the government but also destroys any hope of impartial justice. However, Tommy Suharto's case is not just a story of rampant corruption but also a warning about the dangers of a system that allows money to dictate the rules. Tommy's luxurious cell in Cenang is a symbol of how distorted justice can become when economic power is allowed to prevail. And as corruption continues to erode the foundations of society, the fight for a more just and equitable system becomes increasingly urgent. Cenang, a prison known for its relentless harshness, is a place where daily survival is a battle, where prisoners face overcrowding, suffocating heat, and precarious conditions. However, for Tommy Suharto, this hell was transformed into a private paradise. Instead of facing the suffering and deprivation that define life in Cenang, Tommy used his fortune to create an oasis of comfort, completely separating himself from the reality faced by other prisoners. The transformation of Cenang from a brutal prison into a private paradise was a process that involved more than just money. It was a demonstration of power and influence in its rawest form. From the moment Tommy Suharto entered Cenang, it was clear that he would not be treated like the others. His demands were promptly met, and the very structure of the prison was altered to accommodate his desires. His accommodations were modified to include air conditioning, a luxurious bed, and even a private garden where he could find moments of tranquility, far from the brutal reality that defined the rest of the prison. While Tommy's cell was equipped with all the amenities money could buy, the rest of Cenang remained a place of pain and suffering. For common prisoners, Cenang was a nightmare, a place where each day was a struggle for survival. Unsanitary conditions, lack of basic resources, and overcrowding made life in the prison a severe punishment. But for Tommy, Cenang was a refuge, a place where he could continue living with the comfort and privileges he had always known. The disparity between Tommy Suharto's life and that of the other prisoners in Cenang did not go unnoticed by the public. When the conditions in which he lived were exposed, the outrage was widespread. How could a man convicted of such a serious crime live in such luxury while others, who committed lesser crimes, suffered in inhumane conditions? The transformation of Cenang into a private paradise for Tommy Suharto highlighted the deep inequalities that permeate Indonesia's justice system and raised important questions about the application of the law. The story of Cenang and the transformation of its cells to accommodate Tommy Suharto's desires are a grim reminder of how power and wealth can distort justice. What should have been an institution of punishment and rehabilitation became, for Tommy, a place of privilege and comfort. And while he lived in luxury, the other prisoners continued to face the harsh realities of a brutal prison, without the relief that money could buy. The story of Cenang is therefore a reflection of what happens when justice is corrupted by the power of money. The revelation of Tommy Suharto's luxurious lifestyle in Cenang was a turning point in public perception of corruption and inequality in Indonesia. For many Indonesians, seeing a man convicted of murder living in extreme comfort while other prisoners suffered in inhumane conditions was the last straw. The scandal was not just an exposure of Tommy's life in prison but also a window into the systemic failures of the country's justice system. When images of Tommy's cell were released, showing his life of luxury with air conditioning, television, gourmet meals, and regular visits, the public reaction was one of outrage. Anger spread through the streets, and social media buzzed with criticism of the endemic corruption that allowed such disparity. For the average citizen, who often faced an unforgiving and punitive system, the idea that someone with money could escape the real consequences of their crimes was unacceptable. The inequality and corruption that many felt in their daily lives now had a face: Tommy Suharto. The media, recognizing the magnitude of the scandal, quickly embraced the story. Newspapers, television programs, and blogs devoted countless hours and pages to exposing the preferential treatment Tommy received in Cenang. The reports detailed not only the luxuries of his cell but also the bribery network that allowed him to live like a king behind bars. The journalistic investigations revealed a deeply rooted system of corruption, where money and power were the keys to subverting justice. Public pressure mounted and protests began to spread across the country. People demanded change and accountability, not only for Tommy but for all those who allowed him to live in such luxury in prison. There was a clamor for justice, for reforms that would ensure that prisons were places of punishment and rehabilitation, not of purchased privileges. The revolt was so intense that the Indonesian government was forced to promise a review of the prison system and to launch investigations into the corruption cases that were revealed. However, despite promises of reform, many remained skeptical. Distrust in the institutions ran deep, and Tommy Suharto's case had only reinforced the perception that justice in Indonesia was a commodity that could be bought by those who had the means. The public revolt, therefore, was not just a reaction to the scandal itself but a cry of despair for a system that seemed to fail in protecting the interests of all, regardless of their social position or wealth. Tommy's case became a symbol of everything that was wrong, and the fight for justice became more urgent than ever. The Tommy Suharto case brought to light a disturbing reality that extends beyond Indonesia's borders: the existence of prisons where punishment, rather than representing retribution for crimes committed, is transformed into comfort for those with money and influence. In various parts of the world, luxury prisons or privileged incarceration conditions are offered to wealthy individuals who manage to subvert the original purpose of these institutions. What should be a place of reflection and rehabilitation becomes an extension of the luxurious life these individuals have always known. One of the most notorious stories of luxury prisons is that of Pablo Escobar, the infamous Colombian drug lord who, when surrendering to authorities, struck a deal to build his own prison, La Catedral. This building, which was supposed to confine him, was actually a luxurious mansion equipped with a nightclub, a soccer field, and even an artificial waterfall. Escobar lived surrounded by comforts and continued to run his crime empire from within the walls of La Catedral. His case exemplifies how power and wealth can completely distort the notion of justice. Another example comes from Norway, where Holden Fangel prison is often mentioned as the world's most humane prison. Although not exclusively for the wealthy, the prison reflects a rehabilitation philosophy that diverges from the punitive approaches seen elsewhere. The cells are equipped with flat-screen TVs, mini-fridges, and private bathrooms. For the inmates lucky enough to be transferred there, life in prison is significantly more comfortable than in any ordinary penal institution. Still in Latin America, the case of Juan Carlos Martinez, a former Colombian senator convicted of drug trafficking, illustrates how the wealthy managed to turn prisons into spaces of privilege. During his time at La Picota prison in Bogotá, Martinez expanded his cell, creating a small apartment where he hosted luxurious parties with guests, live music, and alcoholic drinks. The extravagance was such that it provoked a public outcry, leading to his transfer to a less luxurious prison. However, the episode revealed how money can buy privileges even behind bars. These examples, along with the Tommy Suharto case, are reflections of a justice system that often fails in its mission to punish fairly. While most prisoners face harsh and punitive conditions, the rich and powerful manage to avoid the worst parts of prison life by buying comfort and even freedom. What should be a place of seclusion and reflection becomes, for these few privileged individuals, a refuge where life continues almost unchanged. The existence of luxury prisons is, therefore, a disturbing reminder of the inequalities that permeate our judicial systems and the ongoing struggle to ensure that justice is applied equally to all. The saga of Tommy Suharto is a grim reminder of the corrosive power of wealth when it comes to justice. In an ideal world, the law would be blind, applying equally to all, regardless of social status or fortune. However, the reality is often more complex and unjust. Money, rather than being a simple means of exchange, becomes a tool to shape reality and, in many cases, subvert justice. Tommy's story is a clear example of how wealth can distort the fundamental purpose of the judicial system. The corruption surrounding Tommy's case is not an isolated incident but part of a global narrative where money often overrides morality and justice. When it comes to wealthy individuals, the consequences of crimes are often mitigated or completely avoided through financial power. Bribes, influential lawyers, and powerful connections become the weapons of choice, allowing these individuals to circumvent the laws that govern ordinary citizens. Money not only buys comfort but also the perception of invulnerability, creating an elite that operates under its own rules. The Tommy Suharto case highlights how fortune can be used to create a parallel reality where punishment is transformed into privilege. The transformation of his cell into a luxury space, complete with all possible amenities, is a testament to how money can buy not just material goods but also the very experience of incarceration. For Tommy, prison was not a place of repentance or reform but a space where he continued to wield power and control, using his wealth to manipulate the environment around him. This phenomenon is not limited to Indonesia. In many parts of the world, we see examples of how the wealthy manage to avoid the consequences of their actions. Whether through favorable plea deals, exorbitant bail payments, or the simple ability to bribe authorities, the rich often escape the punishments that would be applied mercilessly to the poor. This disparity fuels public disillusionment with justice systems that are perceived as unequal and unfair, serving only the interests of those who can afford to pay for their favors. The story of Tommy Suharto is, therefore, more than just a simple anecdote about corruption. It is a vivid illustration of a systemic problem that affects societies around the world. When justice becomes a commodity for sale to the highest bidder, the very concept of equity is corroded. The fight against this reality is difficult but necessary, for only in a system where the law is truly blind can we expect justice to be applied fairly and equitably to all. Tommy Suharto is more than just the spoiled son of a dictator. He is a symbol of how power and wealth can distort the most fundamental structures of society. His life, marked by excesses and a sense of impunity, culminated in a story that challenges the notion of justice in its purest sense. When a man convicted of a crime as grave as murder can turn a prison sentence into a luxurious experience, we are forced to question the effectiveness and integrity of the system that is supposed to ensure justice for all. The public outrage generated by Tommy's case is a reflection of a society tired of seeing the rich and powerful escape the consequences of their actions. The clamor for reforms, both in the prison system and in the judiciary, is not just about one man's case but about the need for deep changes that can restore faith in institutions. For many, the story of Tommy Suharto is a reminder that the fight for justice is ongoing and that without constant vigilance, corruption and economic power can easily subvert the ideals of equality and fairness. Tommy Suharto's legacy is not just that of a criminal who managed to avoid full punishment. It is also that of a system that failed in its most basic mission. His actions and the conditions he enjoyed within Cenang are a clear example of how corruption can erode public trust and undermine the effectiveness of institutions. However, the impact of his story can go beyond immediate outrage. If the lessons from Tommy's case are truly learned, they can serve as a catalyst for reforms that finally address the inequalities he exemplifies. Ultimately, the fight for justice goes beyond Tommy Suharto and luxury prisons. It encompasses the need to create systems that are truly fair and impartial, where the power of money cannot buy favors or distort the law. This requires not only institutional reforms but also a cultural shift where corruption is fought at every level and where equity becomes the guiding principle of all governmental and judicial actions. Tommy Suharto's case is a call to action, not just for Indonesia but for all nations that seek to build just and equitable societies. Only through continuous vigilance and an unwavering commitment to justice can we hope to overcome the challenges posed by corruption and inequality. Tommy's legacy is, therefore, a warning, but also an opportunity to correct course and that was the shocking story of Tommy Suharto, a case that makes us reflect on the power of money and the fragility of justice. If you enjoyed this video and want to support our work, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your participation is crucial for us to continue bringing stories like this. And speaking of incredible stories, don't miss our next video, where we'll dive into the life of a true trillionaire princess, Sirivannavari Nararatana of Thailand. You'll learn about the luxuries, secrets, and curiosities of this fascinating figure of modern royalty. Click here to watch and see you in the next video.